my lovelies, I apologise about any background noises. I think my neighbours are doing some construction, but I'm back with a YouTube video and I haven't filmed one for a while, and I'm going to start with doing my summer TBR. You can tell I haven't filmed a video in a while because this lighting is really bad having it at the side, but I cannot be bothered to set up a tripod, so you're on my book stack on top of my drawers. So my summer I'm counting as starting on the 1st of June and going all the way up until the end of September. My last piece of work for my BA in English and Related Literature was my dissertation, and that was handed in 2 weeks ago, but we've had some stuff going on that's made the last 2 weeks a bit complicated. So I'm starting my summer next week when I can actually sit down and read a bit more. I wouldn't normally make TBR videos, and I do have quite a few books that I want to get to, but because this is going to be 4 months where I have no university reading because I have finished my BA and I will be going back for a master's, but we're not quite sure what university will look like in autumn yet. So I decided that I am going to make a TBR video, and I have got a priority stack which I'll go through first. So my first priority book is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas, and this is the finale book in the Throne of Glass series, and it is one chunky boy. I am already about 550 pages into it, but this is a 980 page book. Therefore, there is still a whole book's worth of story to get to, so I'm still counting it in my TBR. There's not much I can say about this because this is the last book and there's a heck of a lot of lore to it. But I can say that all these different threads that she's been putting in for the last 7 books, including the prequel book, are all coming together in one big tapestry, and I love it so much. So this is well worth a read if you really like fantasy books that are really deep into their lore, because it starts off quite pace with the first prequel book and the first book, but when you get further down the series you realise just how brilliantly detailed she has made it. So this is my absolute priority and I'm adoring it so far. The next book is not one of the books I actually put on my original priority list, which I did a whole bullet journal page for, but because of the recent death of George Floyd and how absolutely horrific police brutality is in America, I feel like I need to bump this book right up my reading list and read it as soon as possible, and that is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. George Floyd was a black man who was killed by the American police. He was approached by 4 white police officers for an alleged forgery, which was not a violent crime and did not solicit a violent reaction. George Floyd did not resist arrest, yet one of the police officers felt the need to put him on the floor and kneel on his neck, which is not permitted in police training, and did kill him. George Floyd... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm shaking trying to explain this. Because the police officer was kneeling on his neck, George Floyd was saying out loud, very clearly, that he could not breathe. And this eventually led to his death because of this cop. And it shouldn't have happened. As a white person in the UK, police brutality in America felt like something that was a horror that was too distant and too horrific to be real. But seeing the video of George Floyd losing his life and the life going from his eyes, all because of racism, just shakes you up and makes you realise just how big of a problem this is, and this is something that we really need to be focusing on, and the Black Lives Matter movement. And now more than ever is the time to be reading books from black authors about black stories and sharing their stories and raising awareness and contributing to their protests and their charity funds and any sort of funding that they need, because scary shit, man. It's scary shit that I hadn't registered living in my tiny little village world in Wales. And after hearing all about this on the news and through social media, I feel really ashamed to realise that the books on this list that I put together are all white people. And I feel really ashamed about that, so I need to be making a hell of a lot more effort. So I thought The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas is on my shelf, so that is going to be my priority after Kingdom of Ash. I'll read you the blurb. Star lives in 2 worlds, the poor neighbourhood where she was born and raised, and her posh high school in the suburbs. The uneasy balance between them is shattered when Star is the only witness to the fatal shooting of her unarmed best friend, Cal Hill, by a police officer. Now what Star says could destroy her community, it could also get her killed. So that horrible taste of reality, which is just a small taste of what goes on in America and how much racism is in the world, made me realise that I need to make more of a conscious effort to read from books from authors of colour, and I need to make more of an effort to buy books from authors of colour, and that's what I'm going to try and do. The next on my priority list is We Hunt the Flame by Hasef Faisal, who is a Muslim author, and I'm absolutely sorry that I have butchered that name. I was absolutely buzzing about the UK paperback release last year, and I got it around its release date, and I just haven't had the time to pick it up. And this is going to be part of a duology called The Sands of Arawiya, and it is about people live because she killed. Saphira is the hunter, forced to disguise herself as a man. She braves the cursed forest to feed her people. People died because he lived. Nazir is the famous Prince of Death, assassinating those foolish enough to defy his autocratic father, the Sultan. Both are legends in the kingdom of Arawiya, but neither wants to be. Both are embarking on a quest to return magic to their kingdom, but as the journey unfolds, an ancient evil begins. So, yet again, another fantasy book. All of these books are going to be very heavily leaning towards fantasy, and it's got one hell of a beautiful map. So I've been meaning to get to this for a really long time, and I know the next book is, I think it's either out on UK paperback already, or it's really close to being out on UK paperback. This is where it wasn't until I put Angie Thomas on this list that I'd already set out for myself quite a while ago that I started looking into the back of all the books and checking out who wrote them, and really realising that the majority, and I mean a heavy majority of what I read, is done by white women. And that is my fault. That is absolutely my fault for not being conscious of that fact before now. So I apologise in advance. I will try and buy more books from people of colour and stories from people of colour as I go along, and add these and interweave these in between my TBR. I thought I was a person who read to expand the horizons, and now I'm very much realising that I'm a person who is far too comfortable in the world of fantasy, very much encapsulated by that Sarah J. Maas theme of fantasy as well, and that I should be reading to educate myself, because there are authors out there who will do both. The authors of colour who will write the fantasy I'm very much comfortable with, and I need to be reading books that are going to make me uncomfortable as a white person as well. And I think that's a problem we need to fix as a Bookstagram community as well, because I'm not, the fact that I have to go out and search for them means that they're not being shown to me on these hyped up books in Bookstagram and BookTube, and I think we need to adjust that, and we need to start hyping up books from people of colour. And I need to go through what's Jazz's actual list, because she has a list on her Instagram. Her Instagram is What Jazz Reads, and she has a link to a list of books by people of colour. And now I'm going to jump into those Instagram hyped books with A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer, which is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely. I can't tell you much about this book without spoiling the first book, but let's just say it's going to be dealing with the aftermath of the curse that was in book one. And we're also focusing a lot more on a character who was a little bit of a side character in the first book. We're focusing on Grey, who was the commander of Prince Ren in the first book. The next book that I'm really hyped about is, of course, the next Sarah J. Maas book, and that is Crescent City, A House of Earth and Blood. This is going to be following a slightly different setup. It's much more of a city-like, and it's about Bryce Quinlan, who used to light up the Crescent City, partying all night in the clubs where the strict classes of angel, shifter, human and fae merged into the sea of beautiful bodies. And then a demon murdered her closest friend. 2 years later, when the supposed killer is behind bars but the crimes start up again, the city's leader commands Bryce to help investigate. They assign an enslaved fallen angel, Hunt Afurla, to make sure she does. But as Bryce fights to uncover the truth and resists her attraction to the brooding angel who shadows her every step, she finds herself following a trail that leads deep into her own dark past. So we've still got the really magical elements of fae, but we're adding in things like angel and shifter and demon hunters, but it's much more in a city setting, and this is a really beautiful book. And the last in my priority reads is a really chunky boy, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is a book that I couldn't help but be attracted to when it first came out, and I couldn't help myself. I just bought it as hardback straight away because I'm drawn in once again by the fantasy. This is actually a fantasy standalone book. Fantasy standalones are quite rare. Standalone fantasies are actually quite rare. Why can't I say rare? standalone fantasies are actually quite rare to come across, hence why it is quite a chunky boy at about 800 pages. And it is about a world divided, a queendom without an heir, and an ancient enemy awakens. The house of Brentford has ruled Innis for 1,000 years. Still unwed, the Queen Sabran IX must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are creeping closer to her door. Iad Durian is an outsider at the court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Iad keeps a watchful eye on Sabran, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the dark sea, Tani has trained to be the dragon rider since she was a child, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided east and west refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. So I'm hoping this is sounding like a very intricate fantasy world, and by God, it is an absolutely beautiful book. So I have high hopes by how much marketing has gone into it. Usually when they want a book to be pretty and intricate, they're expecting it to be a big success, to have spent all that extra money on making it look beautiful and collectible. So high hopes for this. I know one of my friends, Books at Bex, has started reading it recently and says she couldn't put it down, so that gives me high hopes. And I am quickly going to go over some of the books that are in my not so priority but I know I want to read soon. One of which is Philip Pullman's The Amber Spyglass, which is the third in the Northern Lights trilogy. I read the other two last year. I enjoyed the first one. I found the second book dragged, but I've heard people say that it pulls back again in The Amber Spyglass to be more surrounded by that fantasy world, so I'm excited about that. And there's another set of sequels that I really want to read, and that is Shadow Play and Masquerade by Laura Lamb, and these are the second and third books in the Masquerade trilogy, in the Mika Grey trilogy. I read Pantomime right at the beginning of this year, really enjoyed it. It was something different because it followed a character that was neither male nor female as they ran away to join the circus, and it's this half magical, half Victorian setting that's a little bit steampunk as well. So there is lore that needs to be unravelled that we didn't get all of in the first book, so now I'm excited to see them in book 2 and book 3 and just have Mika discover themselves a lot more. I've also got some books I've had for quite a while, one of which is Stephen King's It. I recently got into watching the movies and I really enjoyed the movies and watching YouTube videos about where the Easter eggs are from the books to the movies. So I decided that I actually wanted to read it as well. And it's a chunky boy, so summer is the time for chunky boys. So I really want to read it. And also another book that I've had for a while. This is a book I've had since around about the same time as We Hunt the Flame, and I was really hyped about it back then. And that is Four Dead Queens by Astrid Skottel. And this is actually a standalone fantasy as well. This is about this queendom that is split into 4 sections for the 4 different queens. And we have Kiali Corrington, who may seem harmless, but in fact is one of Kodara's most skilled thieves. And Varen, who is an honest, upstanding citizen of Kodara. And they get involved in this whole conspiracy where the 4 queens of this kingdom end up dead. So this looks very exciting. And the other one that I've had for a long time is a book that I actually got from Christmas. And this is Loki, Where Mischief Lies by Mackenzie Lee. And this is a book about a younger Loki, and it's set partly in Asgard and also partly in the Victorian era, which I think will be very interesting. Then I've also got this big stack of books that I have recently bought and are very much in my radar at the moment, although I'm not sure whether I will get to all of these, including Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nicholas, which is about the suffragette movement, The Binding by Bridget Collins, which is about how you can have memories that you want to be forgotten about bound up as books. And one day Emmett Farmer, who is the Binder's Apprentice, finds a book with his name on it. So what memory has he wanted bound away that he doesn't want to ever know about again? And then I've also got 2 Laura Purcell books. I recently read The Silent Companions and found her writing deliciously creepy, so I immediately went and bought her other 2 books that are currently available, including Le Corset and Bone China. Laura Purcell writes historical fiction with a creepy twist, which I also really like. And then I've got big stack, and then Then I've got Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, which is about the graduating cadets of an Aurora Academy being assigned to their first mission. But this band squad ends up being quite a very mixed bag of people, so I'm intrigued about the dynamics that'll go on with that. And I've also got these two beautiful hardback books that are going to be fantasy duologies. One is Serpent and Dove, very pretty, by Shelby Mahurin, and this is about a witch and a witch hunter who are forced to marry. And I also have Bone Cries Moon by Catherine Purdy, which is meant to have a really good lore to it, a really deep lore to it, and it's about these people who are called Bone Criers, which I'm excited to find things out about, and also just adore books with Charlie Bowater illustrations on them. That was very, very chaotic. I apologise in advance, but those are some of the books that I really want to get to, although these big stacks of my non-priority books I think will end up being moved around so I can read to educate myself more, which is a new priority. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next video.